We begin with tonight's big statement. Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte announcing that she is withdrawing her bid for re-election as mayor in 2022. Her brother, Baste Duterte, who was supposed to seek another term as vice mayor, will be substituting for her.
This development further raises speculation that the presidential daughter will be substituting for a national post in 2022. But whether or not that's for the presidency or the vice presidency is anyone's guess right now. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. This move by Mayor Sara Duterte comes just days before the deadline for substitution of candidacies on November 15.
It also happened on the very day that Senator Bongo hinted at the possibility of changes in his ambitions to be vice president. Mayan Los Baños has the big story.
In a surprise move on Tuesday, Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte officially withdrew her bid for re-election. Instead, her brother Davao City Vice Mayor Baste Duterte, who also dropped his vice mayoral ambitions, will be gunning for the city's top post. Attorney Melchor Kitain was nominated to run for vice mayor. Question now is, will Inday Sara seek a national position?
She already said that she will not abandon Davao unless for compelling reasons, meaning there is really a good reason why she will run.
Attorney Bruce Rivera, a close friend of Inday Sara, believes it's more likely for the presidential daughter to run for vice president. Rivera also received information that there are people from Bongbong Marcos's camp in Davao right now, but it is not clear whether they are there to talk to Mayor Sara.
She always has told me time and time again that she's not running for president. But yung vice, naging mas open siya.
Should Mayor Sara run for VP, she will be competing against the likes of Senators Kiko Pangilinan, Tito Soto, and Bongo. But during a malasakit event in Antipolo, Go says his plans for 2022 is still up in the air.
Itong kandidatura ko bilang vice presidente ay maaaring magbago. Kasi hindi ko maiwasan. May mga changes po sa politika na sabi ko nga, napakadumi.
Just like Gos, there's no clarity yet as to what Sara's next move will be. But should she be the running mate of Bongbong Marcos, UP Associate Professor Jean Encinas Franco says they're going to form a formidable team, but it does not mean they will surely win.
I'm not saying that they are unbeatable, but if you look at the resources of Bongbong Marcos, if you look at the popularity of Sara, malakas siya.
But according to Congressman Joey Salceda, one of Mayor Sara's advisors, running for VP is a non-option and that picking a VP is not a problem. Reporting for News 5, Mayan Los Baños, we are One News.
To help us analyze Davao Mayor Sara Duterte's latest move, we have with us on the show Professor George Tigno, a political science professor and researcher from the University of the Philippines. Professor Tigno, welcome to The Big Story.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, what do you make of this? A lot of people immediately jump to the conventional thinking na ito na, BBM Duterte tandem na. That presumes a number of things, including that she will run for vice president more than for president. But what are the other scenarios that people may be overlooking here?
Okay. Yes, you're right. No, we may be seeing the unfolding of a game plan that is similar to what happened in 2016. Okay, but first of all, let me say withdrawal is a candidate's choice. it's a candidate's free choice. No? Just as voters are free to change their minds, candidates also enjoy the same freedom. No, but second of all, I mean, if Mayor Duterte is going to substitute for another candidate, she needs to join the party of the substituted candidate. Okay. And so right now it's anyone's guess. Okay. Sara Duterte can certainly run for any position at this point, except for mayor, since she has already withdrawn from that position. And it can be a local, it can be a national position. And given her popularity, not only in Davao, but also nationally as the daughter of the incumbent president, she would have little to worry about in terms of popularity and campaign resources.
But let's talk about specifically the option to still run for president. If she does that, then she's running head to head, not just with the opposition, but also with Bongbong Marcos as well. So how plausible and how wise would that option be?
Okay, right now you're looking at the candidates for president to be a rather crowded place. Okay, 6 or 7 candidates right now, viable candidates at least. You know, you're talking about 98 people who want to become president or who are applying for their candidacies. No, but eventually, again, I guess it's going to be whittled down to maybe 6 or 7. It's still very crowded. No. And so she can, but at the same time, like I said before, given her popularity and the resources that can be made available to her as the daughter of the president, I mean, the other candidates are going to be given a run for their money. As to her running as VP, that's also another choice. But again, you're looking at, again, another crowded space here for candidates for vice president.
Okay, Professor George Tigno of the University of the Philippines, maraming salamat po. Here are the other election stories we're watching. Senator Manny Pacquiao is changing his stance on the revival of the death penalty. In an interview with 1PH1 Balita Pilipinas, Pacquiao said he worries of wrongful convictions with a flawed justice system. He called that Pacquiao had pushed for the return of capital punishment in the past. Presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos faces yet another petition against his candidacy. A group of professionals joined the plea of other civic leaders who had already submitted their petition to cancel Marcos' COC. Through lawyer Howard Calleja, the group filed the petition on the same grounds of Marcos' non-filing of tax returns in the 80s. In line with that, COMELEC has now raffled off an existing petition to cancel Bongbong Marcos' candidacy, which went to the poll body's second division. The COMELEC second division consists of 2 members, former Court of Appeals Justice and Commissioner Socorro Inting, and former Justice Secretary and Commissioner Antonio Co. Jr.
These are the other big stories tonight. The sudden changes in the political scene in Davao comes just hours after reports of Mayor Sara sacking her information officer. The official reportedly attended a party, which later became the subject of a drug raid. The Interior Department backs local government's lifting of the face shield policy, saying such orders are allowed. The Health Department is also open to the idea of substituting face shields with goggles. And the economy grew beyond expectations in the third quarter at 7.1%. Economic officials are bullish of a return to pre-pandemic size as early as the first quarter of next year. These big stories after the break.
evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Local and national officials continue to be at odds on the use of face shields. The IATF says it's bound to decide on the matter by Thursday.
But in lieu of face shields, a proposal has been made to use another alternative, goggles. Romel Lopez has the story.
In the crowded streets of Divisoria, face shield seems to be unnecessary. If somebody's sporting one, chances are it is worn as a headband. Same goes at the vicinity of LRT station in Oroceros. Pedicab driver Caner, who was once fined for not wearing one, says its scrapping has been a long time coming.
Di, mas maganda sir, tagalin sir. Kasi ako tinikita na nga doon Dala na ako.
Getting rid of it might mean lesser sales for vendors like Laika, but she admits.
Ikaw ba mismo sa tingin mo, dapat tayo naka-face shield?
Kung ano naman talaga sa sarili natin, kaso lang minsan sa gabal.
Mayor Isko Moreno is firm that non-mandatory wearing of face shield in the city stands, despite the pushback from the palace. But he finds a supporter in Interior Secretary Eduardo Año, who says local chief executives can nix the face shield rule. But he says a formal policy would still be better.
But for those LGUs na nasa low risk, I will not hold it against them. Pero maganda, ipo-formalize natin yan through IATF resolution.
If the health department had it their way, an additional layer or protection is still better. But compromise may be made depending on the alert level.
Siguro, voluntary by and large, pagkaasa alert level 2. Pagka nagtaasan na naman ang kaso, okay? So, pwede natin gawin mandatory sa alert level 3 and 4. No? So, may mga ganon flexibility dapat.
The DOH is also not closing its door on the possibility of using goggles as an alternative for the face shields.
Naandyan po yan. Pag-usapan natin with experts and then we will provide appropriate recommendations to the IATF.
The IATF is set to revisit the use of face shields on Thursday. Pending that, the Metro Manila Council remains confident that its recommendation to discard the face shield in non-medical and public transportation settings would be approved. For News 5, Romel Lopez. We are One News.
The Justice Department says vaccination cannot be grounds for suspension or termination of 4-piece subsidies. Citing the COVID Vaccination Program Act of 2021, Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara said vaccination cards cannot be an additional mandatory requirement for government transactions, including conditional cash transfers. The Health Department also said that vaccination should not be made mandatory. Instead, Health Secretary Francisco Duque suggests to incentivize vaccination instead.
So, yan po. Hanggang sa maaari, ayaw natin yung sapilitan o yung isa sa batas pa. Wala na tayong panahon para dyan. Konting pakiusapan na lang. Gusto naman magpabakuna, pero siguro konting pagkumbinsi na lamang, papayag na yan. So, pagkato naman, yung incentivize. No? Bigyan mo ng mga premyo. Yung mga taong gusto magpabakuna.
In other news, the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency seized more than 1.5 million pesos worth of drugs at a beach party raid in Davao de Oro last November 6. Among the confiscated items, supposed LSD, shabu, party drugs in liquid and tablet forms, and marijuana. The PDEA arrested at least 17 people, including the host, but the most striking aspect of the sting was the presence of Jeffrey Tupas, the information officer of Sara Duterte. Tupas confirmed her attendance, but supposedly left an hour before the raid. She said she had to work the next day, which was a Sunday. Duterte said they've already fired Tupas, who tendered her resignation at the same time.
For the big story in sports, Denver Nuggets star Nikola Jokic could be facing a suspension from the NBA. In the final minutes of a blowout win over the Heat, Jokic responded to a hard foul from Markieff Morris by charging into Morris with his right shoulder. The cheap shot earned Jokic an immediate ejection and left Morris injured on the floor. Jokic finished the night with 25 points, 15 rebounds, and 10 assists. But considering the nature of the foul, Jokic will likely face suspension plus a fine.
Nuggets have 5 on 4, and Jokic, oh no! No!
Meanwhile, here are the other updates on the NBA games. Warriors star Stephen Curry scored an NBA season-high 50 points in Golden State's 127-113 win over the Atlanta Hawks. Curry finished the night 14 for 28 from the field, 9 for 19 from three-point range, while chipping in 10 assists and 7 rebounds. Curry has now tied with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the 10th most 50-point games in NBA history. And at age 33, Curry also passed Wilt Chamberlain as the oldest player in NBA history to post a 50-10 game. Let's now take a look at the other scores from earlier today. Time for another quick break. When we return, it's highly likely that full-year growth targets will be hit after the economy grew 7.1% in the third quarter. With Metro Manila residents moving more freely, traffic has also returned to pre-pandemic days. That's why the MMDA is now eyeing the return of the number coding scheme. And have you bought your tickets yet? Cinemas are set to reopen their doors tomorrow. A look at what you need to know before watching on the big screen after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Some good news, the country's economy grew 7.1% in the third quarter.
Economic managers are hoping this is a sign of a return to pre-pandemic levels by next year. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez gives us a front seat to this story.
The Philippine economy grew much faster than expected in the third quarter this year. Gross domestic product came in at 7.1%, much higher than what most economists predicted. Household and government spending both rebounded strongly, and most sectors improved. NEDA Secretary Carl Chua says we are now on track to hit or even exceed the government's target of between 4 to 5%.
Our progress in the third quarter shows that the recovery is accelerating. This entails everyone's cooperation. It entails managing the risk better.
But the quarter 3 reading marks a slowdown from the second quarter, when the economy expanded 12%. That's because Metro Manila and nearby provinces were placed under ECQ again in August due to the surge in COVID cases. Bad weather in September also played a part, with typhoons damaging crops. Chua says it's now about learning to live with the virus.
We cannot use the excuse anymore of the COVID-19. We have lived with it for 20 months. We know what we can do and what we should not do.
Chua also says the IATF is targeting to move NCR down to alert level 1 by January next year, in the process gradually reopening classes.
In the coming weeks, the vaccination program will include children aged 12 to 17. When the approvals are made, we will soon include children aged 5 to 11. This opens the door to the resumption of face-to-face schooling beginning in January 2022.
With this, optimism is high that the economy could return to pre-pandemic growth levels before the end of Duterte's term. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
With increased economic activity comes the heavy traffic. And nowhere is that more evident than on EDSA. So is it time to bring back number coding? Gerard De La Peña with this story.
Forever is back in EDSA. Since Metro Manila eased to alert level 2, heavy traffic along the major thoroughfare has neared pre-pandemic level. Daily vehicle volume now averages 400,000, just 5,000 vehicles shy of how it was prior to the health crisis. This prompted the MMDA to once again consider reimposing the number coding scheme. But this time, only during rush hour from 7 to 9 a.m. and 5 to 7 p.m.
Very crucial ito dahil nakita naman natin nung nag-alert level, talagang grabe, naglabasan ng tao. Whatever it is talaga dapat paghandaan ito.
Motorists are split.
Pwede naman sir kung makakaluwag ba ng traffic yun eh. Okay lang yan.
Parang hindi rin ganun kaakma sir ngayon. And syempre lahat kanya-kanyang paraan din para makaiwas na sa number coding. So yung volume ng sasakyan talagang medyo alanganin pa rin sir mabawasan.
A possible return of the scheme might also mean higher ridership in public transportation. Transport groups are now asking the government to allow 100% passenger capacity in PUVs.
Maganda naman po yung naging resulta nung pagtaas ng seating capacity sa 70%. Medyo nakakabawi po kahit papaano. Sana nga po 100% na dahil vaccinated naman na po halos ang 88% dito sa NCR.
Authorities are also considering to improve the Pasig River ferry system to help ease traffic congestion. The MMDA has opened the Kalawaan Station in Pasig City, bringing the total number of ferry stations along Pasig River to 12. Fares are free for now.
Kung papansinin po natin, yung ridership ng MMDA River Ferry mula 2020 hanggang 2021, times 5 na yung ridership. So nakaka-encourage po yung mga bilang na ito.
The MMDA is slated to open 2 more stations soon, one in Quinta and another in Marikina. For News 5, Gerard De La Peña, We Are One News.
Another big story in sports, the PBA has relaxed its eligibility rules for Filipino foreigners entering the draft. According to PBA Chairman Ricky Vargas, interested Phil foreigners will only need to have a Philippine passport for them to be eligible in the rookie draft. Vargas added that the league will also increase the allowed number of Phil foreigners per team from 5 to 7. For years, the PBA required Phil foreigners to submit documents from the Justice Department as well as the Immigration Bureau to become eligible.
Would you scream your lungs out in a quiet place? Or would you venture into the most dangerous planet dubbed Dune? Well, first things first.
You have to be ready.
Cinemas in Metro Manila are finally reopening on November 10 after 20 long months. So will cinemas in Bohol, Iloilo, Laguna, Rizal, Tagaytay, and Tarlac. Epic sci-fi Dune and horror sequel A Quiet Place Part 2 are among the first selections available. Following suit on November 17, superhero film Black Widow and horror thriller Don't Breathe 2. The Metro Mandela Film Festival is also back this December. But the movie-going experience won't be the same. Only the fully vaccinated will be admitted at 50% capacity. You can't also munch on your favorite popcorn, as eating won't be allowed. In this Quezon City cinema, officials installed ribbons between seats, as well as safety markers inside and out. This San Juan Mall put up markers along ticket booths. It also has thermal scanners at the entrance. Moviegoers can't wait to purchase tickets.
Oh, mas maganda kasi pag mga widescreen, diba? So excited.
I wanted to watch as well kasi diba syempre parang 2 years rin.
But for others, fear is the mind killer.
Pag medyo wala na masyado yung virus.
Wala ko muna. Netflix muna po. Saan ma'am? Netflix po.
Mall officials hope the reopening would somehow offset months of losses, especially that the holidays are coming.
Of course, it will help the business also around the mall. So we will have more foot traffic.
Tickets would retain its pre-pandemic price. For News 5, JC Cosico, We Are One News.
Last night, we saw photos of Tuvalu's foreign minister standing knee-deep in the sea for his climate change conference speech. Well, his speech is already out. For the most part, Simon Coffey's 4-minute speech was shot close up against a blue background. Coffey warns against the impact of climate change on their 12,000 residents and eventually the entire world over the next few years. With a few seconds left, he said, "We cannot wait for speeches when the sea is rising all around us this time." And his bigger message, I mean, look at that.
We must take bold alternative action today to secure tomorrow. Faftailasi, Tuvalu Modetua.
A very, very powerful statement indeed.
Yeah, that's clear enough, di ba?
At may mga Pinoy pala tayo na nandoon sa sa UK ngayon to represent the Philippines. And there was actually a high-end survivor who also did a speech, and I'll be talking to her, and we'll see that tomorrow.
And that's the truth. We are a frontliner. The Philippines is a frontliner in climate change along with the Pacific Islands. So that message should resonate with all of us.
At meron din pala tayong Pinoy na nakapasok sa Digital for Climate, Digital Art for Climate. So please vote for Bricks Dumas. Just go to my Twitter account. Send in your votes. Alam mo, palaban tayo mga Pinoy sa ganyan eh. Well, that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.